Hi, everybody. My name is Kevin Shook. I'm a hydrologist, a researcher here at the Center for Hydrology in Saskatoon. And I'm going to be talking today about R Markdown. I've been using R for about 12 years now, and I've been using R Markdown for the last 2 or 3. And I'm going to talk about why it might be useful to you as hydrologists.
Hello, can people attending hear me? Oh, if so, could you type it in the questions or the chat box? Okay, all right, so you can hear me, but you can't hear Dr. Shook. 1 second. Kevin, if you can hear me, can you try logging back in online? Sorry about the delay, everybody. Hopefully we can get this sorted soon.
Can people hear me now?
Yes, we can. Great,
Okay.
good to have you back. I'll mute again.
Okay. All right. I don't know what happened. Okay. Everybody can hear. Good. Okay. Well, I'm going to go back a couple of slides since nobody could hear what I was saying. Okay. So what is Markdown? It's R Markdown. So it's a variant of Markdown, which is an older language for creating formatted documents from plain text. It allows you to take a plain text file and add commands to add formatting to it. It's very easy to use, much simpler than a word processor. R Markdown builds on Markdown by adding several features to it, the most important of which is that it allows you to add R code to a document. This was developed for RStudio, and it works very well with it. And so we're going to see all the examples here today are done with RStudio. So why use R Markdown? Why should you be using this? Well, the big advantage of this is that it makes your work reproducible. Because you can combine code with output, whether it's numbers or tables or figures, it allows you to do a detailed explanation of the code and what the output means. So this makes your work easy to understand when you come back to it later on. It also integrates very well with Git and GitHub, which means that you can store different versions of your work. It gives you version control of the document and the output. And so it makes it very easy to fix mistakes. The other reason for using R Markdown is it also makes documents more reproducible. Because they contain R code, they can be regenerated at any time. And so if you get more data, then the document can be updated to reflect the changes in the data. So it's not just like you have a hard-coded number in a document. It could be a value which is based on a calculation. And another reason for using R Markdown is it allows you to distribute your results to others very easily because you've got explanations in the document and it contains the code as well as as figures and tables. So it makes it much easier for other people to read rather than just an R script file. And we're going to see that there are tools in R for writing, creating complex documents. And we're also going to see that you can use these tools to automate technical reports. So you can produce very sophisticated output quite easily. So the documents that you produce in R with R Markdown can include several different types of components. So you can have text, which we're going to see can be formatted very nicely. You can have live R code, including the output. You can have figures, which are output from R calculations. And you can put in images from other sources, so any kind of picture that you want. And you can also include equations as well, which can be formatted very, very nicely. So all these things work together very nicely in an R document. Now, you can also create many different types of documents in R Markdown. So the first one we're going to see a little later is what are called R notebooks, which are really the bread and butter. It's probably going to be the most important thing I show you today. You can also create reports. I'm going to talk about those a little bit. Slide presentations. You can create a complete slideshow in R Markdown. People have written books in R Markdown, believe it or not. There's quite a few books in R, about R, which are actually written in R. It's quite a nice way of doing it. You can create web apps in R. So it's possible to create a web app which is based on R Markdown. So the idea is that the heavy lifting of the calculations that are required would be done by an R script, and then will be displayed on an R browser. And finally, I'm going to be showing you some vignettes and explaining what those are for R packages. So all of these are done with R Markdown. So it's a very useful system for creating a lot of different types of documents. The output formats that R Markdown can use are quite varied. So the main output format that R Markdown uses by default is HTML. So it really creates files which can be viewed in any browser. We're going to see that you can also create PDF files very easily. You can create LaTeX. This is a format which is used typically for writing scientific papers. It's also used for equations, and the two go together very nicely. You can output to Word, which is really useful. So if you are working with coworkers who want to edit the document in Word or are comfortable working with a PDF, you can give them a Word document. It's a very nice way to distribute results to people. And if you're creating a presentation, you can even output it as a PowerPoint document. So Markdown can actually can actually create PowerPoint documents. Are people still having trouble hearing me? One person is saying they can't hear me at all. Is that still a problem? Okay, some people can hear me. Must be just one person. Okay. So how does it work? Well, what you do is you write your document in plain text using R Markdown. And we're going to see that it uses very simple formatting rules. It's very easy to do. It's much simpler than LaTeX. If you've ever written a paper in LaTeX, it's tricky. I've never been able to do it without making a lot of mistakes. So this is a much simpler alternative to writing a document in LaTeX. You can also use LaTeX within it. We're going to see switch between plain Markdown and LaTeX if you want to insert equations. That works very nicely. But the bulk of the document is just written in plain ASCII text. You have to install a package called R Markdown. And this is best done through RStudio. And this will then go out and install a whole bunch of other packages, Knitter, YAML, all these other ones. And this takes a while. The first time you don't have to do this once, which is good, but it takes quite a long time to install all these packages because some of them are quite large. So once you've done this, you're then ready to create R Markdown documents. So how do you do this? Well, in RStudio, it's pretty straightforward. You click on File and then New File, and you select the type of a document that you want. We're going to see there's different kinds of documents you can create. And then RStudio very helpfully creates a skeleton for you. So it creates a bare bones document, and it's a really, with some examples of our code and output. It's very nice. It gives you an example to follow. And you then edit the document inside RStudio. And when you're ready to do the output, you just click on the knit button at the top. And you see here, you can knit this document to an HTML file or to a PDF or to a Word document, whichever you like. It's very simple. So the knit button is added automatically for you when you add the knitter package. So knitting is the process that it uses to create this document. And that's really it. That's pretty much all you have to do. So I mentioned several different output formats, and to use some of these, you have to add some extra software to your system. And these are all free open source software, so they don't cost anything to get. The first is that you need LaTeX if you want to use equations or if you want to output to a PDF file, because the two are related. And so you're going to have to install LaTeX on your system. Windows, you can use MikeTeX, and on Mac OS, you can use MacTeX, and you can download them from there. These are big programs. They do take up a lot of space. LaTeX, it has about a gazillion add-in packages, and they do take up quite a lot of space on your computer. The other program that you're going to need is a program called Pandoc, and it is from its name, you can guess it's a document converter. It's a very clever program for converting document files amongst different types. It's very, very useful. It's also free open source software. And this is required to output Microsoft documents. If you want to output a Word or PowerPoint document, you're going to need Pandoc. And you can on Mac OS or Windows, you can just download it from pandoc.org. So it's a free install, and it's very, very useful. So once these programs are installed, you're good to go. One of the nice things about RStudio is it has built-in cheat sheets. So if you go to the help system, you can see help and then cheat sheets, and you can see there's a Markdown, there's an R Markdown cheat sheet, which is very, very useful. Explains all the different types of documents and all the different formats. And then there's a quick reference guide, which is a little shorter. So this is a very nice thing. The help is just that far away. So it's really pretty simple to use. So one of the things that's useful or nice about Markdown or R Markdown is that all the documents use the same basic formatting commands. It's all very similar. So whether you're creating slides or a Word document, you're using the same types of formatting commands. So to create text, you just type it in. It's just type normally. One of the things about Markdown that might be different to you after using a word processor is that all the text is in paragraphs, even if you manually break the line. So in that line that says each of those words was typed on a separate line, yeah, I typed each of those words on a separate line, and then that's what it did to them. It put them all into one single paragraph. To force a line break, what you do is you put 2 spaces at the end of the line and then press enter. And that's how it knows that this is going to be a paragraph, this is going to be broken. So when you get to the end of a paragraph, you type period and space, and then press enter to indicate that you're going to a new paragraph. So this takes a little bit of getting used to. To emphasize some text is pretty simple. You put asterisks or underscores before and after the text. And it doesn't matter which you use. You can use either an asterisk or an underscore, whichever you use. And a single asterisk will make the text italicized, and 2 asterisks will make it bold. That's it. That's all you have to do. So that's how you can easily italicize or boldface text. Titles. So there are about 4 different levels of titles that are available, and to indicate that a piece of text is a title, you just put a hash symbol before it. So the larger the number of hash symbols, the further down it is in the headers. So 1 hash is header 1, 2 hashes is header 2, 3 hashes is header 3, 4 hashes would be header 4, and each one is smaller than the last. So this is what you use for your titles inside your document. It's pretty simple to do. To create bullets, you just type in a hyphen before the text, hyphen in the space. To indent, you just use a tab or 2 spaces. So bullets are very, very simply done. To put in an image, you put in an exclamation mark, and then you have to have square brackets with some optional type of text. So this would be just some information about what this image is going to be, followed by the file name. So if you look down below, you can see an example. Here I've put in a picture which I found off the internet. This is a image which is of the South Saskatchewan River, which is freely licensed. And I put in the website of the guy where I got it from, and then in round brackets, parentheses, I've got the name of the file. That's it. And then we will put the image in your document. Can you adjust the size and placement? Yes, you can, but I'm not going to get into that right now. It's really very straightforward. Now, as I mentioned, one of the big things or reasons for using R Markdown is to put R code inside of your document. And it can be done in 2 ways. The first way is you can put code in line where it is where the output of the code will be put into your document. And to do that, you put in a backtick and then the letter R, and then the command that you want, the R command you want, followed by a backtick. So here's an example. I've got a sentence that says there were, and then I have backtick R, and then I have an R command. So assuming that there's a data frame called cars, this will execute the R command in row, giving us the number of rows in that, and we'll add it into the output. So it will then produce there were however many cars are in the database, data frame studied. There were 50 cars studied. So this allows you to create documents where you could easily put in the results of calculation into the text, which is very, very powerful, particularly if you're writing reports for other people to read. Now, a more powerful tool is what are called R code chunks. And the idea here is that you can put in chunks of multiple lines. So you can put in several lines of R code, and each chunk can be executed separately in your document. I'm going to show you how this works. So to insert a chunk, you can use a menu command, or you can just press Control-Alt-I for insert. And when you do this, you get something that looks like this on the screen. So you get 3 backticks, an R inside braces, and then followed by a line with 3 backticks. So anything between those 2 sets of symbols is considered a code chunk. And you can run this by clicking on the green triangle at any time. So you just click on the green triangle and it will execute this chunk of code. The gear there allows you to set the options for this code. You can also type in other options after the letter R at the top there. So if you don't want this code displayed in your document, you don't have to have it displayed. So there's lots and lots of different options. And so what's nice is you can take your R code that you're working on and break it up into little chunks and execute them one at a time until you're happy with the document. And then when it's all done, you can then knit it to the output file. So it's a very powerful way of working on R programs, or working with R. And so you see the output from this. So it's really pretty straightforward, and it's a very powerful way of working with it. This is how I do most of my R work these days. Now, I mentioned LaTeX before. Yeah, you can add equations at any time by just enclosing them with $signs. If you put 2 $signs, it will center an equation on the line. So here's a little equation, and you can see that it just it draws it and it puts it into your document like so. So it's very powerful. Once you've got LaTeX installed on your computer, you can put equations in your document, which could be very, very useful. Tables, well, we're going to see there's several different ways of creating tables. If you want to, you can manually create a table using the pipe symbols and hyphens. And so you would type the header separated by pipes, as you see there. And then the header row is separated by the other rows by using hyphens, as you see. The next rows, we just type each one on a separate row with a pipe in between it. And you get something that looks like that. It's okay. It's a bit of a pain to create a table manually like this. We're going to see some better ways of doing it. But if you want to just type something in a quick and dirty way in your document, it's pretty easy way of doing it. Now, as I mentioned, the reason for using R Markdown is to work with R code. And one of the problems is that a lot of R commands produce tables of output, which might not look very good in your document. They're generally optimized for monospaced text, which is not proportionally spaced. But in your document, it's going to print out this proportionally spaced text, and things are going to wrap, and they're not going to look particularly attractive. So this just shows that running the head command on a data frame called mtcars, and you see it wraps all over the place, and it's kind of ugly. It's not well formatted for output. There's lots of ways of improving the output of R commands, which output as tables. One is with a package called printer. It's just a standard R package. You just install it as normal. And if you if you just put a library command in your R Markdown, file, it will automatically tidy tables of output. So this is just showing the first 2 lines of that data frame, and you can see that it does a much nicer job of lining things up, produces a much nicer looking table. We're also going to see a package called Pander, which is another package that creates very, very nice tables as well. And so I'll show you that one. So there's a lot of add-in packages which have been developed for working with R Markdown, making the documents look nicer. Okay, so I'm going to talk about types of documents that you might want to create. And The most important one that I'm going to show you today, and I argue is the best way to do all of your interactive work with R, is a notebook. And this is the sort of the bread and butter of what I'm going to be talking about. To create a notebook, you say File, New File, Notebook. That's it. And again, it will create a skeleton notebook. The default output of a notebook is HTML. You can change that, though, to being a PDF file or docx. And I'm going to show you one. So I'm going to show you one that combines text, R code, and outputs, including figures. And I'm going to show you the tables are using the pander command. So I'm going to flip, back from this to our studio. And hopefully everybody can see our studio on the screen. And now we should be seeing a document. This is called WDPM Area Volume Scaling.rmd. And this is a small notebook that I created to do a little bit of work. And at the beginning, you'll see I've got the setup of the document. And you notice it says include equals false. Well, that just means that this won't be echoed to the screen. It's not going to be shown on the screen when this is knitted. It's just telling it to use a bunch of different libraries and some options. Then we go down to some text, which explains what I'm doing. And it's doing some analyses. And then you come into the first chunk of code. And I'm going to plot some volumes against areas. And then I fit some linear regressions. And then and you'll notice that the output of the linear regression, I'm using the pander command to tidy them up to make much nicer outputs. I'm then going to do another regression on a second order polynomial and output the regression results. And then I have my final results. So having done all that, I'm going to knit this document. It's going to run through here, doing all the calculations, and here we go. So here's the output of my notebook. So you'll see that this is a PDF document. I could have done it as a Word document. And here you see my commands, my R code, my text, my R code, some figures that are being plotted, some more code doing the regressions. The tables are all very nicely formatted. They're looking very nice. Doing the second set of regressions, getting the output of the second set of linear models, and then the final linear regression that I'm doing as a table. So that's it. This notebook is now a piece of work which I can give to somebody else. I can also follow what I did because I've got all the coding here, but also explanations of what I'm doing. So even though I did this a couple of years ago, I can come back to this and really have a pretty good understanding of what I'm doing. You see this R squared here? That's how you superscript a number. So it's really fairly straightforward to do. So that is how you can create a notebook in R for doing any type of calculations that you're interested in doing. And this is how I do all my interactive work in R. The only time I don't work in a notebook is if I'm creating an R package of functions, which is for myself or other people to use. And in that case, I would almost always be calling the functions from inside a notebook. But this is how I do almost all my work, and it's a very nice way of working. So that's an example notebook that we have. Just going to check and see if there's any questions so far. No, it looks like things are okay. Okay. Now I mentioned reports because that's a nice way of, you can create automated reports in R. So if you are doing something operationally where you are doing the same calculations all the time, every day, or every so often, you can create a report as an R Markdown document and then knit it as required. And what's very useful is you can pass parameters to the document. So if you are working with a different file or a different number or some other value every day, every time you knit the document, you can pass the parameters to it. And so it will redo the calculations with whatever parameters you want to specify. So this is a nice way of automating routine tasks and producing documents that look very nice. So you can do a really nice job. There's a nice demonstration or description here from people at R Studio on how to develop parameterized reports. So if you're interested in doing that, I definitely look at that link. Slide presentations. I'm starting to use this more and more. You can create two types of presentations in R Markdown, what are called RPres presentations and RMD presentations. So RPres presentations, that's what this is. They tend to be simpler. You don't have all of the formatting options that you do with other types of R presentations. I'm going to show you both guys. This is stored in a file with the extension .rpres, and you can view this in RStudio or a browser. So that's how this document is created. This slideshow that we're watching right now was created in RStudio as a .rpres presentation. I saved it as an HTML file, and now that's why I can view this just through the web browser. To create one of these, the command is file, new file, R presentation. It's very simple. And the way it works is it's just a standard R Markdown document, but each slide has a title line with at least 3 equal signs underneath. So you have the title of the slide and some equal signs. And that's how it knows to break it up into slides. So this is good for simple slides like this presentation, but you might want to do something more complex. And these are what are called RMD presentations. So they're stored as a standard R Markdown file. They can produce a lot more sophisticated slides, but they require other programs to work with them. So they're going to require LaTeX if you're creating PDF slides, and if you're using LaTeX, you have to use the Beamer package. That's not an R package. That is part of LaTeX. So you have to make sure that's installed on your computer. PowerPoint slides, you'll see there at the bottom of that image, that menu. You can create PowerPoint slides. But that requires having Pandoc. And you can also create HTML presentations, which is useful. They're more complex than this one. So I'm just using the simplest way. So to create a presentation, use File, New File, R Markdown, and then from Markdown, you select Presentation. That's how you do it. This is what a Beamer slide looks like. So this is something I gave last year at a conference. And it produces slides that look like any other Beamer presentation. They're not bad. Another type of document that's important is are vignettes. And when you create an R package, you have to document how the functions work. And our packages can now include what are called vignettes, which is a long format of documentation. So it's not just listing what parameters the function uses and what it returns. This allows you to write a document going into detail, demonstrating how the function is used, perhaps with other functions. This is if you are interested in working on an R package, such as our CSHS-hydRology package. This is a great way to contribute. It's also a great way to learn about R packages. So if any of you are interested, I'd like to encourage you to think about working with us on our CSHS-hydRology package. And a great way to get started with that is writing vignettes demonstrating how the functions work. And it's created like any other Markdown document. File, new file, R Markdown, and you say that you're going to create a package vignette. I'm going to show you what a vignette looks like. Going back to R Markdown. And if we go to the help system, this is the CSHS-hydRology package. You can see here, I'm just going to make this window a bit bigger. And you'll see in here it says user guides, package vignettes, and other documentation. You click in here, and here is the vignettes for Paul Whitfield's functions that are in the package. So there are demonstrations of the functions in great detail. It shows how they work. You can see the commands that are being executed, the results, the figures that are being plotted. And so it really takes the user through using the package functions in a very detailed way. And this is just another standard R Markdown document. That's all there is to it. So these things aren't hard to write, but they're extremely useful for users to see. So I would encourage you, if you're thinking of getting involved with an R package development, this is an easy way to do it. Books. Yeah, believe it or not, you can create books, either printed or ebooks in R. There's a package called Bookdown, and that's what it's for. It's for creating books. The documentation is itself a book written in Bookdown, which is kind of meta. It's at bookdown.org. And yeah, you can create a book which can then be output as a PDF, LaTeX, HTML, Word, or an EPUB, which is good for e-readers. You can also publish your ebooks on the web at bookdown.org. So if you want to write a book, this is kind of a neat way of doing it. It's possible to write a thesis in R. I don't know if I would do it, but you can. There's a package called Thesis Down, and it's based on Bookdown, so you have to have that first. So if you wanted to, you could write your thesis in R. Shiny, I mentioned a little bit early. So this is a program, or a package, I should say, for building websites that are powered by R. So the idea is that R would be doing the calculations in the background and then passing the results back to the website. There's a website called shiny.rstudio.com that has more information. The Shiny document has two parts. You have UI, which creates the user interface, and that runs on the local computer. And then there's the server, which does the calculations, and that part runs on the server. The server code can run on your own computer if you're just using it locally, but you can also run on a cloud server. So you could run on, say, the Amazon cloud, or RStudio is very happy to rent you server space. It's free for up to 5 applications. You have to pay for more of them, or you could even have it on your local server, assuming that you have one. So that's another way of working with R. I've never done this. I've never developed it, but I've seen it done, and it's pretty slick what you can do. It's a nice way of putting, if you ever want to put a nice GUI on some R code, you can do it through Shiny. It has all kinds of web gadgets for doing sliders and all kinds of other things to allow the person to interact with the code. So you can get the data from the user and have that sent back to your R code, which is running on the server. Something I've been working with R quite a bit about is writing papers. And R Markdown is pretty good for writing papers. There's some advantages to it. One advantage is that it's all plain text. So if you're using a word processor like Microsoft Word, it saves it as a binary file. And that means that you can't really get at the guts of it very easily. It can get corrupted quite easily. And it doesn't play very well with version control systems like GitHub. This is all done as plain text, and so that does work very nicely with GitHub. There are templates for a lot of different journals, including Taylor and Francis, which is the publisher of the CWRA journal. And to do this, you install a package which is called articles. Now, the templates only work for LaTeX or PDF document, not for docx, unfortunately. You can still net it to a docx, but it's not going to have all the fancy formatting. So what I'm doing these days is I am sending my output, knitting my output to a docx file to give to my co-workers, my co-authors on papers. They can then edit it in Word, send it back to me, and then when the whole thing is done, I'll be able to output it as a PDF or a LaTeX file, nicely formatted for the journals. So I'm going to show you an example of a paper that I'm working on right now, going back to R Markdown. And this is the paper. So here's a paper that I've created, and you'll see I've commented out that it's going to output to articles, because right now I just want to output it as a docx. And here's the document. So you'll see I've got the document. I've got all the references that are referred to in here. I'm going to show you how that's done in a minute. I've got figures which are in here. So this is a figure. This will add it to the document. And at the end, I've got some R code in here. So this is for creating a very nicely formatted table. And at the end, I will have all the references in a bibliography. So if I knit this document, it's going to produce a Word document. And so here we are. This is the Word document that I've been working on. You can see here are the figures in it. You'll notice that it has all the references which are formatted properly. Lots of figures, no equations in this stuff. Here's that nicely formatted table. So this is a Word table. I could edit it in Word if I wanted to. And then finally, at the end, my bibliography containing all the references. So this is how I can write this document, and then I can send this to my co-workers. They can edit it, and then I can go back to my document. So this is a nice way of creating an R document. And when it's all done, I can go back and say, no, I want to output this as an Elsevier article for the Journal of Hydrology, and then it will knit up as a nice PDF or LaTeX document. So that's a nice way of creating scientific or technical documents in R. Now, if you're using R Markdown, as I mentioned, there's quite a few additional packages that you can install, and they're just installed as any other R package. Tables, there is a table function which is built into Knitter for creating tables from it creates tables from our data frames. But there's some other packages which are available which I think do a better job. There's one called Pixie Dust and Flex Table, which is my current favorite. So this is the table that was in that paper that you saw, and it's pretty powerful. So it allowed me to split up the table as you see, grouping it by location and by basin and precision. And I think it does a very nice job. And the output is formatted as a table in the document. So it's very nice. Citations. So the document I showed you, there are a whole bunch of citations. So there is a package called Citer, and it adds citation management to RStudio. So it works with whatever citation program you're using, whether it's Mendeley, I use Zotero, it doesn't matter. Anything that can produce a BibTeX file. And the way it works is once it's installed, you hit Control-Alt-C for citation, and that pops this dialog box, and it allows you to scroll through all the different possible references for this paper and choose them, and then it automatically pops it into your paper. So it also sets up the bibliography. So it does a really, really nice job of that. It makes it very simple to add references to a paper or any other kind of document that you're producing. For formatting, R Markdown is, R Studio is a very nice program for editing in it, but the text doesn't wrap, which is kind of irritating. There is a add-in package called wrap RMD, which will wrap the text, although you have to do it manually, but it makes it look a little prettier when you're editing it. And there's another package called Captioner, and I use that to, it gives you automatic numbering of your figures and tables, which is very nice. So it keeps them automatically in order. So that's very useful as well. I mentioned LaTeX equations. If you can't remember all the LaTeX commands, there's an expression editor. This is in the package Bookdown. So if you install Bookdown, you get this RStudio add-in, and it gives you what you see is what you get, LaTeX editor. So that's very nice. So you can just type in LaTeX expressions, and it will give you the LaTeX code that can then be pasted into your document. I mentioned Word and PowerPoint. So Word and PowerPoint are picky and how that they're set up, and I would really encourage you to read that document on how to live with PowerPoint. It's a very useful article. The way it works is that docx and PowerPointx use default formatting unless you specify otherwise. And the way you specify otherwise is by creating a template document. So you can create a template in Word or PowerPoint, and then you tell your document to use it, and then it will take on the formatting. So that paper I showed you, that was the default formatting of Word, and that's pretty much good enough for working with my co-authors. But PowerPoint's pretty ugly. It doesn't even have a background color. So if you want to create PowerPoint slides in R Markdown, you'll definitely want to use a PowerPoint template to make it look a little prettier. So that's about it. In summary, R Markdown provides a reproducible way of writing documents and documenting your calculations. You can go down the rabbit hole as far as you want. I would suggest, though, that you start with using notebooks for your interactive work. It's a great way to learn Markdown, and it's also has the side effect of making you much more productive in R. Okay, so I've got some questions here. So the first one is from Trish Stadnick, wanting to know, how do you incorporate track changes into the article's document? That's a really good question. So it doesn't work as with a normal word processor tracking changes where they're highlighted, unfortunately. So what you have to do is, this is where it works better with Git and GitHub. So that's how I do it for keeping track of the changes. Unfortunately, if you're working with co-authors who don't understand Markdown, which is the problem, then you're going to have to manually put them in. That's the downside. On the other hand, it might be worth it. I find Word such a pain in the neck to deal with that I've gone to this method. Even though it doesn't do the conventional track changes, I have to manually insert their changes. It's less of a pain than dealing with all the problems that Word causes with corrupting documents. Would it be possible to share one of your published paper on R Markdown notebooks so use it as an example? Yes, I will definitely be including one of the notebooks, so you'll be able to run through yourself. And so can we use R to replace Word someday? Well, that's what I'm hoping. That's what I've done. Because I'm willing to make the effort to work with my co-authors to manually put their changes in, yeah, that's how I'm doing it. It would be best to, the ultimate thing would be to put the paper on GitHub in a private repository and have them be able to edit it themselves through Markdown, but that's not going to happen. So for me, it's easier for me to make the changes and just give them the documents as PDFs or Word documents, and then just manually type their changes in. But that's up to you. So that's how I'm working with it these days. So you may find that it's better for you to keep working in Word and using the track changes. I find, as I said, I've had so many problems doing that in Word that I've gone to this way of doing it. Are there any further questions? So I will be giving all the documents from the presentation. By the way, before I go, I'm going to show you what the presentation itself looks like. So the presentation, as I said, is also done in R Markdown. So if I go down to here, File, Recent Files, R Markdown Presentation, here's the presentation. So everything that you see here is done as an R Markdown document. Oop, and I can see where I missed a bracket there. So now I can save this. It's done. Here's the presentation over here. And you can see I've just fixed it. So you can view this I can view this presentation here. I can view it as in the browser or save it as a web page, which I've done. But it's a very easy way to create a quick and simple presentation. So I will be distributing you the document, the document as the slides as an HTML file, which is what it produces. And I'm also going to give you this document as an R presentation. And I will also be giving you this simple area volume calculations that you can see here, or so you'll be able to see how to create a document. Are there any further questions? Okay, well, if not, thank you for coming. And that's it for today. We will be sending out a zip of all the files to everybody who's been in attendance. Sorry we had the sound issues. I'm glad we finally got those solved. Thanks very much.